Hillary Clinton broke the law and she didn't get indicted. Joe Biden broke the law, and in many other ways we're finding out, and so far has not gotten indicted. I did everything right and they indicted me.
I mean, how do you not trust a guy like that? A guy who speaks to his supporters on the day that he was arrested like that. How do you not trust a guy like that, Jordan? It was really the perfect defense by Donald Trump, who at that point had gone to a Cuban restaurant and then eventually flies back to his golf club to be surrounded by high-priced donors. To what about Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden? As if whether they had committed crimes has anything to do with whether he committed crimes and whether there should be consequences for that. And the way that he delivered the whataboutism was also just so perfect for 2023 America. He just says they committed crimes, and we're finding out about many more. No specifics, no details, no evidence or anything passing for it, but it's enough, thanks to the cult of personality that he's built up on the right, to get all of his followers to be sure that he's completely innocent. What do you think? I know that you were a big fan of that video, by the way.
Video is hysterical. Like that's Trump in his element. The delivery, our colleague here, Brooke Marks, pointed out, it sounds a lot like the slug from Monsters Inc. It's just, I couldn't get over how animated it was. He's got this raspy voice. I did everything right and they indicted me. I must have watched it about 20 times.
Yeah, I can't stop.
He's deflecting from the point. Oh, it's incredible. It's amazing. So I'm really glad you included it for everyone's benefit. He's ultimately here trying to deflect from the fact that he's the first former president to be indicted of a felony. This is a very serious potential crime. He's trying to point fingers at other people, notably often excluding Pence, who also had classified documents at his home. But the thing was, Pence, Biden, I'm sure Obama has some documents somewhere. They'll cooperate. And if his justification is, hey, this is a messy process transitioning out of the White House, and they just happen to be here, we would have given them back. Well, he should have done that when the archives asked for them. He shouldn't have been waiving, nuclear secrets or documents pertaining to a potential attack on Iran in front of people at Mar-a-Lago. It was very clear he knew he had them, and he was proud of them and wanted to show just how important he was for having them. I mean, these are totally distinguishable scenarios from the other former presidents or former vice presidents who also had access or in their possession classified documents. He knows the walls are closing in, and I'm not a big they finally got him this time, because people who are in power in this country get away with a lot of stuff. Very rarely do we see powerful people ever face punishment or prosecution for what they did. He's just in jeopardy, and that could upend his 2024 run. That's why he's desperate. I don't want to get people's hopes up and say he's for sure going to prison, but it is pretty ridiculous that we have people, many in the past couple of years, who worked in the government, who had taken documents home, maybe accidentally, and were punished in way harsher ways than potentially Trump could face.
Yeah, I'm basically dwelling in that sort of similar, I guess, middle ground in terms of expectations. I can think of multiple ways in which Donald Trump could not end up going to jail, but I do want to be clear about my expectations anyway. Of all of those different ways that he doesn't go to jail, none of them appear to be, oh, it turns out he was innocent. Turns out he didn't really do it, or no, that's not, like theoretically the judge that he appointed could get him off, or he could become president and pardon himself, or become president and fire all of the investigators. Joe Biden could pardon him. There's a lot of insane ways that he could not end up in prison, but just on the merits seems unlikely to be it. By the way, before we move into one of the specific defenses he's trying to give himself, I want to throw out to you and to the audience. On Monday on the Damage Report, Francesca Fiorentini said that the reason that she doesn't have much hope is that across the world in quote unquote democracies, there have been a number of major scandals around former heads of state. And she said that she could not think of one instance in which they had legitimately ended up in prison. I'm trying to come up with an example. I mean, even Berlusconi was on house arrest. He's now passed earlier this week. So if anyone can think of an example of that, send it a message and we'll read it during the social break. For now though, let's turn now to one of the preemptive defenses. And I'm not referring to it was planted or whatever. No, this is seemingly more substantive. Donald Trump, in his initial defense after the arrest, made multiple obviously false claims about the Presidential Records Act. Take a look at that.
As president, the law that applies to this case is not the Espionage Act, but very simply the Presidential Records Act, which is not even mentioned in this ridiculous 44-page indictment. Under the Presidential Records Act, which is civil, not criminal, I had every right to have these documents. Judge Amy Berman Jackson's decision states, under the statutory scheme established by the Presidential Records Act, the decision to segregate personal materials from presidential records is made by the president during the president's term and in the president's sole discretion. You're surprised to hear that, aren't you?
No, first of all, no, they're not surprised to hear that because you've been saying stuff like that constantly. All of your allies have been saying stuff like that. They've been saying stuff like that so that they don't have to say anything about the actual charges against you. They don't want to come anywhere near that. So they're saying vague stuff about the Presidential Records Act. Well, let's push past vague stuff. Let's get specific about the Presidential Records Act, which he is claiming there is his ultimate defense against all of this. Although, and there's a couple different things he said there that we're going to return to. One that I want to start off with is this guy says, forget the Espionage Act. It's all about the Presidential Records Act, which proves that I'm innocent. But then he also mentions, by the way, it's civil, not criminal. Seeming to be a bit defensive even there, where, okay, maybe it doesn't save me, but even then it's just gonna be like the E. Jean Carroll thing, right? I'm just gonna owe money, I'm certainly not gonna be going to jail. Well, let's talk about what it actually says, what it actually does. The Presidential Records Act says that all presidential records belong to the federal government the moment the president leaves office. By having official records at Mar-a-Lago after his presidency, Trump was in clear contravention of that law. Let's zoom in on a specific sentence inside of the Presidential Records Act. Upon the conclusion of a president's term of office, or if a president serves consecutive terms upon the conclusion of the last term, the Archivist of the United States shall assume responsibility for the custody, control, and preservation of, and access to the presidential records of that president. And our producer points out, he quoted an actual sentence from the Presidential Records Act inside of that speech right there, but he left off an important point. He said that the separation of the official and the personal records is up to the sole discretion of the president, but he left off during the president's term. Like, nobody thinks that you can just decide years later as the FBI is banging down your door that then you get to separate it. More importantly, it's a meaningless defense. The presidential records that are talked about in the Presidential Records Act are personal records. They're notes and letters and things like that. They are not official documentation from the national security apparatus. Nobody thinks that that's what the act is actually regulating. Anyway, we're throwing a lot of stuff out there. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, again, he's trying to distract and mislead people, in part because he knows his audience is just going to eat it up, but it's ultimately very confusing even for people who pay attention to this stuff. And what he's trying to do is just muddy the waters so that it leaves people with a sense of uncertainty. They don't know where they fall on it. Oh, maybe he actually can have it. Why can't he have it? But again, to go back to what we talked about earlier, these are nuclear documents. These are documents pertaining to a potential attack on Iran. That's not stuff that just should be laying around anyone's house. Those are really sensitive things with national security and foreign policy complications. The funniest defense that I saw about this was, I think on Fox, it was a Washington Examiner conservative columnist and Byron York, and he's talking about how this is really okay, ultimately just because Trump likes souvenirs and collecting memorabilia, and trying to conflate this with a letter that he received from Kim Jong-il. And he just he tried to conflate the two, again, like disregarding the fact that these are very sensitive documents, and that Trump even admitted, we have records showing that he admitted he shouldn't have had them. and they were classified, and he didn't declassify them, and it was potentially a problem for him. That's in the record, and he just kept them. So this whole thing is just a distraction act, and it's really sad to see that his audience and his supporters are just going to lap it up.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I wish could be true so that I could modify the experience that we're all having as we navigate this issue. The first would be, I don't actually hope this, but I kind of right now hope someday I want to support a politician that turns out to be a massive criminal and a massive liar and a grifter and a con man, so that I could experience what that's like as I try to navigate, wait, am I still gonna have loyalty to this person who deserves absolutely none of it? Many right-wingers seem to have no problem with that whatsoever. Thankfully, with the politicians that I've supported, particularly for president, I haven't had to deal with that much yet, but it seems like an interesting thing viewed from the outside. Also, wouldn't it be great, Jordan, if, because the airwaves are filled, they have been now, they have been for months, with people debating the different aspects of this, the merits, the defenses, and all that. Wouldn't it be amazing if right-wingers had to grapple with literally any of the facts of the story? That Donald Trump would have to. Like when they say, well, it was just memorabilia, it was just nothing or whatever. We already know he took a whole bunch of stuff. That's true. Some of it might even classify as memorabilia. It doesn't mean he gets to have it, but maybe it's just memorabilia. Maybe it's, as Ben Shapiro says, he just likes to have stuff or whatever, as if that's a defense, as if he would apply that to a petty criminal who's stealing candy from a store. Then he's subpoenaed, and he begins a multi-phase scheme to hang on to his favorite stuff. The stuff that is not letters from foreign leaders, it's war plans, it's nuclear program materials, those sorts of things. When he's having the documents moved, when he's implying to his lawyer that they should just get rid of them or say that they don't have them, none of that is consistent with it's just memorabilia. The fact that he's taking certain documents to Bedminster and then showing them off to people when they are highly classified, highly sensitive documents, the idea that it's just like a particularly good menu from a state ball that he went to is utter nonsense. And the reason that you mentioned it, I'm sure the reason I mentioned the tape and all that, the conversations with Evan Corcoran, is none of this was accidental. None of this was just, I biffed it. This was so intentional and thought out, not well thought out. He made tons of mistakes. Why he allowed himself to be recorded, I'll never know. But this was clearly a conscious series of decisions, and none of his right-wing defenders have had to grapple with literally any. They don't acknowledge any of these facts that we're talking about.
Totally, they don't have to, because they live in this world where facts don't matter. But juxtapose how they're reacting to Trump and justifying it, making excuses for it, with how they treated people in the past. How they've talked about people like Edward Snowden or Reality Winner, who leaked documents in the national interest, in the public's interest. People, as we'll get to later in the show, especially in the case of Snowden, had a right to know, that don't, like they wanted to claim. Those documents did not imperil us as a nation, did not jeopardize our national security, and didn't strain relations with foreign countries. This was information that they leaked in good faith because they wanted to blow the whistle on something. And they were deemed a traitor. They were, hit with ridiculous charges. They're still going after Snowden, obviously, and Reality Winner served her time. But they threw the book at these people. And Trump, I mean, this is like under Section 702, what they're going after him for. I mean, it's the same law that he signed. He wanted to make an example of people who mishandle classified documents. This is the world that he wanted. He's getting what he wanted, and now they can't acknowledge that hard truth.
Yeah, normalize presidents going to jail for laws that they signed. I just want to see more of that going forward. But anyway, we're gonna jump into a few of the other talking points that you might hear as we cruise through this legal process. Donald Trump loves to talk about some sort of supposed ongoing negotiation that he and I guess all former presidents are supposed to have with the National Archives, where you just take whatever you want, you go about your business, and 6 months later or 2 years later, you're still just sending like DMs back and forth about whether you're gonna comply with what they want. Of course, there's nothing to this. That's not actually how it works, literally at all. But I want to give credit to Donald Trump for, in his attempt to roll out this defense, making it as comical and buffoonish as possible. Take a look at this.
Can be seen in the picture where someone, not me, I wonder who it might have been, dumped one of the very neatly arranged boxes all over the floor. They were full of newspapers, press clippings, thousands of pictures, thousands and thousands of White House pictures, clothing, memorabilia, and much, much more. I hadn't had a chance to go through all the boxes. It's a long, tedious job, takes a long time, which I was prepared to do, but I have a very busy life. I've had a very busy life. They make it more busy because you're always fighting.
Okay, so again, no, you're not in an ongoing negotiation. No, you're not supposed to take this stuff and then if you get around to unpacking your bags someday, you hand over the attack plans against Iran. That's not how that works. Also, like there's a lot to fact check in that. I wanna do one of the pettier fact checks. If you have time to crash countless weddings and eat people's chocolate cake, you got time to go through your presidential records. I know that nobody likes to unpack. I've come back from trips and left my bag for like 6 weeks or whatever. But like, you know that you are being hounded for this stuff. You received subpoenas. Nobody subpoenaed me to unpack my bathing suits. If they had, I probably would have done it sooner. It's just so comical. And it's frustrating, Jordan, as you alluded to earlier, to know that they're gonna eat up every bit of that. Because fundamentally, it's not even that they find him to be persuasive or find his arguments to be convincing. It's that they do not care if he broke the law and they never will.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating illustration of the state of American politics. It's ultimately, the word cult is always thrown around, but I don't know, who cares? Like, who cares what they are exactly? It's just frustrating to see that no matter what happens, no matter what they do, the level of corruptions that they reach, it doesn't matter because they're still going to back them because those people, the people in their party, are not on the other side. Their politics are just, how can we humiliate, destroy, harass, target people who are our political opponents? And that's their world. That's how they identify with the political party. That's what gets them fired up. And here, this is like totally bogus. And if this were a normal circumstance, you would see this after other administrations or potentially every administration. They're all pretty busy people. He's not unique in being busy because he was the president. He's out there golfing. Yeah. He can skip like one golf game and do this, but he didn't want to. He wanted to hold on to it. He acknowledged it. That's in the record. And now they're trying to use this as an excuse. And again, the base is just going to eat it up because they don't care. They want to live in a world where they can just think whatever they want and show unilateral support to this guy.
Yeah, and honestly, it is that they don't care if he broke the law, which I know a lot of people watching this right now probably have been paying attention to the news for some time, but I never try to disregard the fact that some people might be just starting up. I started listening to the Young Turks a couple years into college. I hadn't really been that focused on politics up until then. There's a lot that you have to like learn as you start to be acclimated to American politics. But one of the things that I guess gradually you start to understand that I think the media and maybe schooling, I don't know, does a lot to try to get you to believe that is not true, is that like conservatives and liberals or the left and the right or whatever, Democrats, Republicans, they disagree on policies and they have some different values, but the values will be identified as like you're pro-life or you're pro-choice or whatever. But everything else fundamentally, we're Americans and we all agree. No, we don't agree on any of that base level stuff. Do you believe that hypocrisy is a bad thing? Is not a thing that everybody believes. We pretend. It's nice to believe that everyone is against hypocrisy or everybody cares that their side follows the same rules as the other side, that doesn't believe that the ends justify the means or that power is the only thing that should fundamentally matter at the end of the day. Those are not universal values. There are so many non-universal values that we are propagandized to. And I think it holds us back in terms of our ability to discuss politics. In any event, I want to get to a little bit more of Donald Trump. Let's take a look at this next video.
Now that the seal, so important, is broken, the seal is broken by what they've done. They should never have done this. This was an unwritten rule. You just don't, unless it's really bad. But you just don't. But the seal is now broken.
Okay. So I don't know what the seal is supposed to be. The fact that it's Donald Trump and that his speeches are written by some of the worst ghouls in America, I'm gonna assume it's deeply conspiratorial, vaguely heretically Christian is what I'm gonna guess. Probably both at the same time. Something to do with lizards and or demons, I don't know. But whatever the seal is, it means that he is supposed to be able to do whatever he wants. What I find amazing about that speech happened before Tucker Carlson's show. And Tucker Carlson made this point that Donald Trump did something that you're not supposed to do. He questioned the war, and that was the day they decided to jail him. Forget about the fact that he massively increased the military budget. Forget about the fact that he massively ramped up bombings across the Middle East and all that. He wasn't against wars. He supported the war in Yemen. The guy delivering that message, Tucker Carlson, was also a massive advocate for the war in Iraq. All of it's nonsense. But in that message that Trump said, he implied that there is something that you're not supposed to question, and it's elite unaccountability. Trump is telling his base, which has been trained to be populist and deeply suspicious of power, that you're never supposed to do this. There's not supposed to be any consequences, and the Biden administration broke that because they pretended that the law is supposed to apply to everyone. It's amazing that he can deliver that in public, and he just couches it in a bit of like vaguely apocalyptic language, and they eat it up. Any final thoughts, Jordan?
I don't know what the seal is broken means. I like I've seen other people in the chat acknowledge we have a different reference point for that phrase. It has nothing to do with presidential records, but maybe it is. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is some dominionist, end of days religious term. Who knows? It certainly would work well with his base. Tucker running to Trump's defense is so funny because it shows how pathetic and desperate he is in this moment now that Fox is coming after him for doing a Twitter show. And also juxtaposed with, Tucker potentially or trying to be seen as some anti-elite talking head, like the rare anti-elite talking head on the right. No, at the end of the day, he was always Trump's lapdog. He was always defending everything he did. And he was so close to the administration. The Trump team brought Tucker's son on for an internship. They're very, very close, and he's never been anti-elite, despite what he wants to frame himself publicly as.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the fact that some people have knowingly or unknowingly bought into the idea that Tucker Carlson is an actual critic of any of this is so absurd. All of his defense of Trump at the end of the day is the defense of a former president, a billionaire, the current head of the Republican Party, anti-elite, definitely. He wants to maintain the Republican status quo of Donald Trump being in charge, anti-elite. Has Tucker Carlson ever advocated for any sort of significant cut to the military budget? Why are people pretending that he's anti-war, anti-anything? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's absolutely absurd. It makes about as much sense as Donald Trump's legal defenses when it comes to the classified documents.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.